and welcome. Raising your game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you this week? I hope you're well. Hope you're hanging in there, enjoying the warming weather. Feels like spring is on its way. Daylight savings, we just had that change. That's always sort of an odd thing. And didn't we end that? I swear, a few years ago, they said it was finally a done deal. We're going to have permanent daylight savings time. Maybe that's just a Senate. Anyway, I don't know. We still have it. I honestly don't mind the change that much, though I'd probably prefer permanent daylight savings if it comes to that. As you know, I do not love the winter darkness. Anyway, just interesting. Looks like things are warming up, and that's lovely. So plenty to talk about this week. Trump's First Amendment violations, the EPA rollbacks they just announced, some concerning AI developments, more good and hilarious pushback, some practical stress management techniques and pronunciation exercises, perhaps our challenge of the week, and more new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things are pulling me down? For my ups, the big one is that I'm back playing pickleball. Played on Monday and Wednesday this week. Didn't play that well, but the fact that I played at all is excellent. You remember probably I was on a 30-day rest after my ablation procedure. All has been good with that. The one thing that would consistently trigger the heart arrhythmias was exercise, and specifically pickleball. Pretty much every time I played, something would kick in. So this was the big test, and it went well. No symptoms of any kind. I'm still on meds, for another couple of months, and those do limit the rhythm events, so it could still be those to some extent. The next level of testing will be when I get off those and see what happens, but still very good so far. Also back up to full weights at the gym, feeling good about that. Also, after a month of not playing, I really expected to be sore after starting back up this week. I used to get sore if I even took a week off, but no soreness either, and that has to be creatine working its magic. Thankful for that. Just feeling pretty good all around physically. That is very nice. A funny up, I got Margaret a bird feeder with a camera in it for Christmas. Might have mentioned that. It's been fun to get little videos of the birds. But a lot of time, the videos we get are of squirrels up there. Funny also, but not what we were looking for. So they've obviously somehow figured out how to get up there. I've been trying to imagine how they do that and squirrel-proof it so we can just get birds. But since I don't know how they're doing it, I can't really know for sure how to stop them from doing it. So I was sitting in our dining room the other day. I saw a squirrel jump up into our garage from a tree, and I thought, oh, he's heading for that feeder. Let me see how he's doing it. The feeder's mounted on the side of the garage, and this is my chance to see how they were getting into it. So I ran over to the window, and sure enough, there he was on the corner of the roof above the feeder. He couldn't see it from where he was. He was up on top. It was below the eave, attached to the wall. I still couldn't see for sure how he was going to get there. So I watched, and I waited, and he really took his time. I assume he was pausing in each position to make sure he was safe, but he sat there for a couple of minutes. Then he moved closer to the edge for a couple more minutes. Then he went down and upside down, climbing down the downspout, and he jumped over to the feeder. I was actually impressed to see the feeder from the ground and figure out how to go 50 feet away to the other end of the garage, climb up the tree to the top of the garage, back to the other end, climb down. That was impressive. Almost made me want to just leave it as it is out of respect for the effort. Still thinking about that. But that really lit me up, getting the chance to see that. The Noom program, trying to lose some weight again, that's going well. Been very, very good about staying within the limits, the daily calorie limits. And that's the main thing, right? The scale is not showing the gains it should be yet. That's typical, and it's early. And that's actually part of what makes the Noom system so good. As long as you're hitting your daily numbers, you know the weight is going to come off because it's just math, right? Burn more calories than you take in, weight comes off. The scale, on the other hand, can really bum you out at times, right? Because it can be all over the place. And I'm getting some of that now. Anyway, so far so good with that. The song I mentioned that was beating me up last week, Finally got it. Feeling very good about that. Just need to get the vocals on there now and then move on to the next one. That's excellent and a big relief. For my downs this week, of course, is the never-ending Trump Republican awfulness. But one small manifestation of that is our car, our beloved Tesla. We love that car, had it for 3 years now, had the previous one 2 years before that. Love pretty much everything about it. But now it's been sort of ruined with all this crazy. We're actually feeling socially uncomfortable in the car, which was ridiculous to associate someone's car with their political beliefs. But that's where we are now in our country. They continue to ruin everything. We're to the point now that we're seriously considering selling it. It's a bummer. Looking at the Ford Mustang Mach-E instead. It's a great car too. I'm sure we'd enjoy that too, but still not happy about that. We'll see where we go with that. Anyway, those are my ups and downs for this week. Next up, top stories. The top item for me this week is Trump's not just threats, but direct violations of the First Amendment, which is a bit rich when you remember that they present themselves as being First Amendment absolutists and the victims of limits on their free speech. They've been complaining about that for years. But of course, like everything else with these guys, it's just bullshit, right? The only speech they actually care about is their speech and other speech they like. But there were two super serious items this week. The first was Trump threatening to cut federal funding for, quote, any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests, unquote. Illegal protests. In our country, reminder, because of the First Amendment, there's no such thing as an illegal protest, literally. As long as it's nonviolent, it's legal. It's one of the pillars of our democracy, right? But he goes on to say, quote, agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came, so I guess he means foreigners there, even if they're here legally, which we'll get to in a minute. For American students, they will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested, end quote. First, isn't expulsion by definition permanent? Never mind that. Where's the crime? If they're violent demonstrations, that's a crime already, and I assume they would be jailed for that. But he's just clearly saying, if you protest something that I'm for, you should be deported or jailed. And that's just a clear violation and unconstitutional. The president, of course, swears an oath to defend the Constitution and see that the laws are faithfully executed. Among the many other ways and reasons this is bad, it's just a clear dereliction of duty, right? If we had a real Congress, he should be impeached for things like this. And I mean, no joke. But he doesn't seem to care about the laws. One more reason to get him out of there. He truly thinks he is above the law. He is a king. And the threat is not theoretical. This week, you probably heard about this too. They took a guy in the middle of the night from his home and his pregnant girlfriend in New York and shipped him off to Louisiana in detention, planning to be deported. All these years, all the conspiracy crazies on the right warning about jackbooted thugs breaking down your door and taking you away in the dark of the night, they just did exactly that. And why? He's been a leader of the pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University. Peaceful protests, legal protests. He's a legal resident with a green card. They haven't accused him of any crime. It's just speech they don't like. It could not be a more blatant violation of the First Amendment. Now, he's not a citizen, but he's a legal resident with legal rights. You might believe his positions are wrong and even dangerous and anti-democratic, as I do, but there are a lot of people in our country who fall into that category. But if you believe in the rule of law and our Constitution, you have to oppose what they're doing to him. It's just illegal and unconstitutional. If this is allowed to stand, they can come after literally anyone they disagree with. And they will, right? It's this guy today, it's you and me tomorrow. The other big item for me this week is the EPA announcement. Their announcement of big rollbacks of regulations around pollution. This one really gets me. It's so cynical and stupid and dangerous, sort of the theme of this administration. So the EPA director, Lee Zeldin, just another typical Trump cult stooge, framed it as the, quote, most consequential day of deregulation in American history, end quote, as if they are freeing millions of patriotic Americans from the burden of stifling regulations. No, what they're actually doing is undoing protections against air pollution from power plants and cars, from mercury, undoing clean water laws, undoing a rule that allows states to stop pollution that comes from neighboring states into their airspace. It's basically a huge sellout of public health for everyone, by the way, rich, poor, red, blue, we all breathe the same air, but they're selling that out to big business and corporate polluters. And the most disgusting part is the smug anti-science attitude. He actually referred to the, quote, Green New Hoax, quote, right, that childish Donald Trump language. He said they were driving a dagger through the heart of climate science religion. It's not religion, it's science. We believe it religiously because it's true, you complete moron. The good news is, apparently they can't just do it. They have to go through an involved legal process. They might not be able to do it at all ultimately, but it's still incredibly stupid and dangerous and just a perfect example of their entire governing approach. I remember back in the 70s, the Cuyahoga River, if I'm saying that right, in Ohio, was actually on fire from the pollution in the water. That's how bad it was in our country. And it's light years better now. Why? Because of the EPA and their regulations. Why would anyone with a brain want to roll those back? It just makes no sense. The third big item wasn't Trump or Republicans. Thank you. Wasn't even really news. It was a podcast I heard from Ezra Klein on the current state of AI that sort of blew my mind. The headline for me was AGI, which you probably know is artificial general intelligence, as opposed to the plain AI we have now, like ChatGPT, which is good at one thing. AGI is roughly defined as a system that can basically do any cognitive work that a human can do. Anything we can do and do it better. Experts have been saying that's 10 to 20 years away. Now they're thinking 2 to 3 years away. It's very likely to happen during the Trump administration. This is so big, you can't get your head around it. 2 examples from the pod to illustrate just a hint of how big it is. Ezra said he tested an AI doing a research project. He has a lot of smart people on staff who normally do this kind of work for him. He wanted an analysis of some historical opinion versus current policy proposals, something like that. I didn't even really understand what he was saying, to be honest. But the AI, available today, gave him results in a few minutes that were essentially comparable in quality to what his staff could come up with in days. Minutes versus days. And that's available now. He also said experts believe in the next 1 or 2 years, most code, most software, will not be written by humans anymore. AI will be doing all that work. So again, think about it. Any cognitive work a human can do, an AI will be able to do it better within 2 to 3, maybe 5 years. Just think about how massively disruptive that'll be. We really have no idea. How many software engineers are there in our country, for example? Good paying, high-level jobs. What's going to happen to all of them? Marketers, editors, analysts, so many jobs and high-paying jobs are going to go away. What will we do as a society to deal with that? They're not necessarily places for them to go, right? We're going to need a whole new paradigm for work and income and finding meaning and purpose in our lives, and it is coming fast. And that doesn't even get into the impact on national security and defense and cyber attacks and weapons and all that. We are truly on the cusp of a revolution we can hardly even imagine, like there's never been. It really is mind-boggling. There are a lot of smart people Thinking about it, the guy he was interviewing was one of them. He worked in the Biden administration as a lead on this project. They were taking it super seriously. Of course, I doubt Trump is. Very little chance his team is focused appropriately on this or would not screw it up if they were. So we shall see. But watch this space. In the dumb and dangerous category, we have RFK Jr. continuing to tell anti-vax lies and discourage vaccinations. Not only telling people, like in interviews, but in policy, cutting back programs on advancing them. And what were they doing? They were studying people's resistance, kind of psychological resistance, and the efficacy, trying to help them be even more effective. They're cutting off that research. All that happening during a measles outbreak that continues to grow. Measles is one of the most infectious diseases ever. And they're basically not taking it seriously. There's an outbreak, speaking of diseases, in the Congo. I read about this, of a new disease that's like Ebola, which is, of course, horrifying. But there's no USAID teams available to investigate. And there always were before. Apparently, the lab that was built to deal with things like this is empty now. Thank you, administration. That sounds bad. Just plain dumb, maybe a little sad too. The DoD, Department of Defense, in their mania to purge all hints of the dreaded DEI from the military, flagged pictures of the historic Enola Gay aircraft to be removed from their files. So maybe you know this was the plane that dropped the first atomic bomb on Japan. It was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. The plane was actually awarded that. It's a historic icon for our country. I mean, it's horrifying, but it's still an important piece of history. They flagged the pictures to be removed because it had the word gay in its title. This is how dumb we have become. By the way, 73% of the French public no longer considers the U.S. to be an ally. Thank you, Mr. President. Job well done there. On the corruption watch, did you see this? The insane Tesla commercial on the White House lawn. This was the most ridiculous thing. Donald Trump and Elon Musk with the White House in the background, and Trump is standing there selling Teslas. Not even a joke. He bought one for his granddaughter. He doesn't care about these cars. He's railed against EVs for years. He hates electric cars and hasn't driven himself in decades and likely never will again. So why is he doing that? He's doing it because his biggest donor's car company, Elon Musk, is being protested against and boycotted by people who hate what he's doing to their country, and the stock price is falling. It's just blatant corruption right in front of the White House. The Daily Show did a great takedown of this. You have to see the video. There's a link in the notes. It's hilarious. But it's just a massive insult to and debasing of the White House. If you remember, Obama was raked over the coals by the right for, of all things, wearing a tan suit one day in the Oval Office. Heaven help us, the shame. Trump is selling cars to help a donor. If they would have fit in the Oval Office, he would have done it in there. It's just unbelievable. How ridiculous do we look to the world? Speaking of corruption, this is interesting. I'm trying to figure out what in the world is going on with these tariffs, right? On again, off again, make no sense. I heard something this week that finally did make sense, and that is that they're a vehicle for his personal power and corruption. When the president can just create tariffs on anything, on a whim, he sets up a system where he has power over all these companies. Come to me, bend the knee, maybe put some money into my crypto coin. No tariff for you. That makes sense to me. It's just all chaos and corruption with these guys. Last one, spokesperson for the Office of Personnel Management. So this is the group that's playing a big part in all these massive, cruel, stupid DOGE cuts, firing people from their jobs, ruining their lives. While she's doing that, this woman from her office is modeling her work outfits on social media, taking pictures of herself, posting them online with links to where you can buy them so she earns a commission on the sales. This wannabe social media influencer cutting massive numbers of jobs, ruining lives, while at the same time grifting from her office while at work. You can't make this stuff up. On the pushback front, I want to mention again the wonderful Trump sandwich because it's so fun. White bread, bologna, Russian dressing, small pickle. It's a classic. Tell your friends. We are actually going to our first protest this weekend. Never done anything like that before. It's a town hall for our asshole congressman, Derek Van Orden. This guy is truly the worst. And he's been avoiding town halls. Tough guy, Navy SEAL, afraid to talk to his actual constituents. We'll see how that goes. I assume he won't show up for that one either. The big question mark this week is if Senate Democrats will hold the line on this budget bill. I hope they do. It's complicated with the government shutdown, but I hope they don't just cave and get nothing. We'll see about that too. I loved Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona this week pushing back on Elon Musk. Kelly went to Ukraine, talked about the need to support them, made a post online, of course, support democracy. By the way, he's a Navy veteran, pilot, former astronaut, pretty serious guy. Elon called him a traitor for his Ukraine post. This from a guy who, as far as I know, never served anyone in his life other than himself. It's disgusting. But Kelly pushed back pretty well. Love seeing that. So once again, plenty of bad things happening. No sign of them slowing down, but good things happening too, and more to come. All right, next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week, we talked about the quote from Leo Tolstoy at the end of the Raise Your Inner Game book. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. I always love that reminder. This week, I want to talk about a couple of practical stress reduction techniques. One we've covered before, the other we haven't. The first is meditation. You may already know how to do this. Of course, there are different ways to go about it. The one I recommend is just sitting quietly. You quiet your thoughts, observe your physical sensations, the feeling of breath coming in and out, of your feet on the floor, and so on. When you notice that you're thinking about something, which is probably most of the time, you gently but firmly pull yourself back. Nope, not now, just sitting. And you do that for a set period of time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever works for you. It's easy to do. It's a lovely, calming thing to do, and it creates real benefits over time. It makes you less vulnerable to stressful triggers, less reactive, and couldn't we all use more of that right now? The one thing to watch out for with this is overthinking it. It really is just the simplest thing. It's sitting and noticing what it feels like to be sitting. Don't feel bad if your mind doesn't stay quiet. No one's does. It's actually the whole point of the exercise, to notice your thoughts and bring yourself back to being still. And engaging with that process is what builds up your strength over time. So don't worry about that. Just keep going back and forth from quiet to thinking to quiet again. That's meditation. The other suggestion is something I associate more with sports, though it's also fairly widely used in mindfulness circles. And of course, there's a big overlap there. Most of the top athletes do some sort of mindfulness work. And we certainly encourage that in our trainings too. But this is an exercise called box breathing. And again, it's just super simple and straightforward. You breathe in for 4 counts, you hold it for 4 counts, you breathe out for 4, and you hold that for 4 counts. I think it's called box breathing because there are sort of 4 sides to it. In, hold, out, hold, right? It's probably extra helpful if while you do it, you also focus your attention on the sensations of breathing and holding, because they get you out of your head and back into the present. But that's something you can do pretty much any time and any place to help calm yourself down and give yourself a reset. The great tennis player, Novak Djokovic, who's known for having just a killer mental game, says this is his main mental game tool during a match. So 2 great things you can do to help reduce your stress both in the moment and over time: sitting meditation and box breathing. Try these out. See for yourself the difference they can make. All right, that's Inner Game Gold this week. Next up, raise your outer game. Just a couple of thoughts this week about money and investing. You've probably noticed The markets are not super happy right now, down quite a bit. Turns out our genius businessman president, who rips off his vendors, grifts constantly, and bankrupted most of his businesses, doesn't actually understand how the economy works. Who could have predicted that? But for those of us with savings and investment accounts, it's created a bit of a concern. I don't have any particular advice. We are taking a fresh look at our situation, talking with our financial advisor, whom we love. I will say that it is a fresh look. We are heavily weighted with Apple stock, for example, and have been happy to be that way for a long time. It's worked out very well for us, even though it doesn't really make sense from a balanced portfolio perspective. Now we're taking a new look at that. It might be time to move things around. So the real advice is to check with your advisor, and if you don't have one, get one. During the Biden years, it looked like we had dodged the recession everyone said it was coming, and that calls for one kind of strategy. If there really is a Trump recession coming now, as it seems, it might be time for a different approach, maybe more foreign stocks, for example, rather than domestic. Ask your advisor. All right, next up, our challenge of the week. This week, let's do some self-care and practice meditation and box breathing. Make a note, set your reminders, see if you can do 5 to 10 minutes of meditation every day. Most people find it easiest first thing in the morning, but whatever works for you. Also, make another note and reminder to try box breathing 2 or 3 times a day, especially if you can do it when you notice yourself feeling stressed about something. That's a great habit to get into, noticing your inner state in the moment and doing something right then to change it. And that's it for this week. Daily sitting meditation, daily box breathing. I expect you will love what both of those do for you. All right, next up, highly recommended. First, I want to mention again the White House Tesla Mall video from The Daily Show. There's a link in the show notes. Just a fantastic spoof of that ridiculous, cringy Trump Tesla event. You really want to see that. Also, the Ezra Klein discussion on AI. We really need to be paying attention to this. I know it seems low on the list right now, but it will very likely end up being the most important thing looking back at this time, so we need to be thinking about it, all of us really, and this is a great conversation. I'm still watching 0 Day and Reacher. I think they're both on, 0 Day's Netflix, Reacher's Amazon. Both continue to be fun enough. I have 2 episodes left of Better Call Saul, and I'm genuinely sad about it. I'll miss the show, and spoiler alert, I'm also sad for how things are ending up. Good news is, it's a good show when you care that much about it. So still highly, highly recommend Better Call Saul. Also still reading Alien Clay, the science fiction book I'm working on. Skipping ahead through a lot of his long monologues. That's working out well. Still not sure where it's going. Excuse me. But it's interesting enough. And that's it for this week's show. Thank you as always for your precious time and attention. If you do enjoy the show, please do give it a review on Apple Podcasts if you would take a minute and do that. That really does help others find the show, which helps us support more people in getting through these times. Also, Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy. If you're an athlete or the parent of an athlete, it's perfect for you and it's guaranteed. Check out raiseyourinnergame.com. Learn more about that. All right, have a great week. Let me know any questions. Otherwise, keep up the good work. I'll see you next time.